Okay, I'm so excited, happy to talk about this book, If We Break, a memoir of marriage, addiction, and healing by Kathleen Buhle. And I would say it's also a book about identity. It's, to me, it was all about identity. So the book came out a week ago. How are you feeling, first of all, about it?
I, I feel good. I'm excited. I'm equal parts excited and scared. Maybe a little less scared now that it's out in the world.
Scared of what? Scared about what?
Um, I don't know. I think I was scared that people wouldn't like it or would, um, not get from it what I hoped they'd get from it. I don't even know. I think it was just, I've not talked to the press ever. So
Mhm.
just everything about the process, I think it was just unknown to me.
You said you were scared or worried that people wouldn't get from the book what you wanted them to get from the book. So what was your intention that people get from the book? What was your mission in writing it?
I think, I have to acknowledge that I'm getting more attention for the book because of who I was married to. But I
Mhm.
really truly believe that my story, is a very common story um, of addiction, infidelity, of course, that's so many people go through that, but also a sense of lost identity. And
Mhm.
um, Amy pointed out when we were talking about that earlier about my cousin Amy, when we were talking about identity, and she said, "You were always Kathleen Buhle. You just had to dig deep to pull yourself back." So it was this sense of rediscovering who I was. And I
You
think
say
that's a lot of women.
you were rediscovering who you were by writing the book, you mean?
Right. I mean, book was incredibly cathartic for me.
But you're saying that you think this book is very much the story that a lot of people go through. So do you think that a lot of people go through losing their identity? Do you think a lot of people go through addiction or betrayal, or is it the whole thing?
I think, I got pretty lost for a while.
Mhm.
Um, I think slowly, whenever you get married, you have to come together
Mhm.
and figure out how to form your new family. And I think it's really important, and I hope my daughters have learned this lesson, and other young women who are going into marriage and partnerships, is that the stronger you have your own identity, the
Mhm.
stronger your partnership can be with your significant other. And so I lost that slowly over time. I just lost a sense of really who I was separate from my marriage. And so when things got really difficult with issues in my marriage, with infidelity, with addiction, I think it was really hard for me because I didn't have a strong sense of who I was.
So what's the lesson there? I mean, what is the lesson to your daughters, to other young women who might read this, going into a marriage and then holding onto your identity in the marriage, no matter what happens in it?
Right. I think that is the message, is to hold on to your identity. And one of the hardest parts for me to write about was that, and I didn't acknowledge it at the time, was that there was a certain amount of shame
Mm,
that I felt about um, where I came from,
yeah.
and maybe not measuring up to this new community that I found myself in. And I love my family. I love where I come from. And so that was really hard for me to acknowledge that for a period I wasn't. I hid that part of myself.
That's what struck me kind of overall, that from the very beginning of your marriage, there was this feeling of like, I don't fit, I don't belong. Um, I am this girl from this side of town, and now I'm over here. And there was doubt from kind of the very beginning. As you look back on all of that and you're advising your own daughters, what could have been different there? Could you have just come in with a like, yeah, I belong here, damn right, and just kept it all the way through?
Right. I mean, I write in the book, there were many times that, I think, well, what would have happened if I just was honest about my feelings, who I was when I was pregnant before I got married, which I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that's happened to, right? I mean, so for me, what would have happened if I had just said, yes, I'm pregnant, but we love each other and we're committed to our marriage, and just lived with that. And we were married for 24 years. We were obviously committed to one another. And this sense that I couldn't own that just brought on a shame that wasn't good for me,
Mhm.
and was, shame's an ugly beast,
Yeah.
and so it just is something that, now that been able to sort of admit that I felt that I can forgive myself.
So there's this kind of like looking back at the young girl that you were going in, and then there's this looking at the woman you were coming out. And both require compassion by you for both of those women. One was a young girl, one was a woman who'd been in a marriage for 24 years. How did you kind of come to peace with both of those women?
When I was practicing the book for the audiobook,
Uh-huh.
and I was reading it out loud, not with like an editorial eye, but just reading it as a story, my heart broke.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for myself. I read it and I thought, oh, that's so sad that I didn't believe in myself,
Yeah.
and that, and I had to forgive myself for that, now I do. And one of the great things, one of the things that gives me so much comfort, um, with my daughters, with my family, with myself, is that I continue to grow today. So even though I can reflect back and think, oh, that's sad that I didn't embrace who I was, and that I didn't really own where I come from,
Mm.
but I do now. And so that's my comfort with my daughters, is that I know that they're open to change and growth, and we continue growing, which is a wonderful gift.
You talk in the book, Kathleen, about how you, in a way, became addicted to helping your former husband get well, that in a way is its own addiction. And in the addiction movement, they call that a codependent relationship, or that they say both are kind of addicts unto themselves, and that the whole relationship is tied together. Both are lying, both are secretive. Pull that apart a little bit for those who are in perhaps a similar thing. How do you pull yourself out of that? How do you step back and go, wow, I'm actually addicted to helping this person, and neither one of us are healthy here?
Right. I think it's education, understanding the role that you can play and the role that you can't play. And I didn't, and again, I had to own this in the book, that um, when when my husband first got sober, I had people in my family who didn't drink, and I knew that they just stopped drinking. There wasn't recovery. I didn't really know anybody closely that was, had struggled like that. So I didn't get to understand what my limitations were. And that comes from Al-Anon. It comes from, I worked with an addiction counselor who told me what my limitations were. But I will say too, anybody who lives with an addict or loves an addict, it is very hard to hear that you can't do something to help them. I mean, it's just when you love somebody, you want to save them. You want to do everything you can. So it is a very difficult um, lesson to learn, and I think a lot of people have discovered that.
What was the moment when you're like, when you yourself realized, I cannot help this man? I
I
had that moment of clarity.
right. I had given I had put this like 1 year mark on trying to help Hunter before, it was somewhat arbitrary. Someone had told me this wonderful to think about um, recovering from my brother-in-law's death as being in the emotional ICU. And he said, when someone close to you dies, you're hooked up to the emotional ICU. You're barely living. And so when he told me that, I looked at Hunter as being in the emotional ICU and thought, I will give him a year to um, to come back to the family, basically. And so it was after that where I gave like my last big effort, which I did sort of a intervention of sorts with all these different providers, thinking, oh, well, this has never been done before. This is going to work. And of course it didn't, because what one of the addiction counselors said to me was, you cannot force him into recovery. And that took a long time for me to hear
And accept.
and accept.
You've talked a lot about, and kind of coming out of things that I've read about the book, about being a partner who not only kind of did everything they could, kept their partner's secrets for them as you tried to deal with his addiction, but also that you abdicated your role in understanding your finances, and that you wanted other women in particular to be forewarned about doing that. That you yourself, a college educated, really smart woman, just said, I'm going to let him do it. I'm not going to pay attention, and that you don't want other women to do that.
Right. And I think that happens in a lot of marriages
Mhm.
where, he went to the office and I stayed home, and I was a homemaker and I worked very hard. It took me a while to realize he was not working harder than me.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked very hard at my role as a homemaker and a mother. And so we just had these two different roles. But what I write in the book, and what I really hope is a message that especially women hear, is that it doesn't matter if you're contributing. It's your responsibility to understand your finances.
I think you're also saying, if I step back and kind of, what is it, dog-eared a lot of pages in here, but you're also saying, you're talking about, it's your responsibility to understand your finances, not bury your head in the sand. It's your responsibility to do what you can, but also to understand the disease of addiction and your role in it and your role out of it. It's also seems to me, your message to don't lose yourself, keep your identity, hold on to your identity, know about your finances, get clear about your shame, get clear about what's yours and what's not. There's a lot of messages in here to that girl who stepped into this family and who lost her way along the way.
Right. And to forgive yourself, to let go of that shame. We all do. I like to believe we're all doing our best, right? And that was, I was working hard to save my family and my marriage. But what I've realized through all of it is that, with the exception of the birth of my 3 daughters, divorce was the best thing to ever happen to me.
Yeah. So
I
let's,
would not have said that at the time, I mean, that definitely wasn't something that I could have said at the time of my divorce, but it forced me to have go back to my identity, to go to find the strength that I always had and didn't believe enough in myself to think I could make it on my own.
so tell me a little bit more about divorce is the best thing that ever happened to me. Who is this Kathleen, and how is she the best thing compared to the Kathleen before the divorce?
I being forced, which was, I was very happy as a homemaker. I loved taking care of the house. I loved raising my daughters. Going back to work after a long absence um, I was insecure about it. I questioned myself, my value, but the harder I worked and found that I was actually good I started fundraising for a nonprofit,
Mhm.
and I did it well. And I also took control over my finances in a way that gave me a peace of mind that I really didn't have when I was married. And I wrote about, the idea that it's okay that we separated those responsibilities. Many marriages do and work very well. But what I did was I gave him all responsibility, financial responsibility, and played no role in how we spent, saved, what we did with our finances. And that wasn't fair to him, and it wasn't good for me.
But also in the book, you talk a lot about holding your tongue. Um, you talk about burying your head in the sand about the finances, trying to help him with the addiction, but also not wanting to ruffle his feathers, not wanting to buck up against the family, wanting to be the good girl, wanting to fit in, wanting to not get in a fight all the time. What is your advice to other young women who might be marrying into a big family or another family about claiming their voice separate from their identity, how to use your voice to fight for yourself or fight for what you believe?
Right. I think it took me really writing this book to understand how angry I was,
Mhm.
and I never said it. When I found out about my husband's infidelity, I told him that I was hurt and I was sad. It was like I couldn't own my anger because then that would mean I wasn't a nice person.
Aha.
And that wasn't being honest. And it's wild sometimes to look at my story. And there were moments where I can't even believe I worried about him, yet I didn't talk to him about it. I didn't say, I'm scared, because I was trying to be a good person and a good wife instead of allowing myself to be honest about the way I felt, about my fears, about my anger. Um, so I hope, and I hope my daughters see this, this ability to now just be really honest with myself. It's such a better place to be. It's such a more grounding place to be, to just say, yeah, I was angry. or I am angry. So
Are you angry today still?
today I'm not angry at all. I mean, I definitely we have 5,000 people here at the lake, and the person who was supposed to pick up the fried chicken didn't get enough fried chicken, and it made me a little angry. But I would say, in general, I'm just in a much better place.
And how do your girls feel about this book? You have three daughters who are reading this as three young women watching their mother, a woman, reading about their father. Um, how have they reacted to this?
They're my, the three most important critics for me for this book, and they have been so supportive. They wrote me three of the most beautiful letters that I've saved. One little note is taped to my computer. Um,
Saying what?
they tell me they're proud of me and that they think this book is going to help a lot of people, which I hope it is. I hope it's going to start a conversation. I hope people realize that, being open and honest about who you are and how you feel is freeing.
When you say you hope this book will, or your daughter say that it will help a lot of people and that you hope it will open a conversation about anger, identity, addiction, healing, self-forgiveness, forgiveness, all of the above.
I mean, it's been interesting the way people are responding to the book. I mean, even, when I was doing the audio book, one of the technicians, when I came out after reading a chapter, said, that was a really hard chapter for me. My father is an alcoholic, and I went through the same thing your daughters went through. And so, I think life is messy. So the book is messy. It's filled with, it's got all kinds of different things. It isn't solely a book on addiction or on marriage or on identity. It's all of that. But I do think sort of the overarching theme throughout all of it is this sense of being honest with yourself and believing in yourself.
It's hard when you're in a public family. I understand this very kind of at a gut level, right? To tell your story without it disparaging other well-known people in the family, right? It's always hard to pull apart what's yours, what's theirs, and how to tell your story separately. So how difficult has that thread or that line been for you?
It's hard because, of course,
Yeah.
I was married for 24 years. And so I have ideas about, my ex-husband's struggle, but that's his story.
Yeah.
And so I really tried hard to make sure that I was only writing from my perspective. And I will say I looked for books like A Beautiful Boy was a wonderful book for me to read, but there's the story of the family that loves the addict is not that's not as common a story. And it is so understanding what my role was and feeling um, maybe some comfort from hearing other people's stories. So I hope that my book can be that.
You said that changing your name from Biden back to your maiden name has been or was, and I would think continuing on, a really freeing experience for you. It was a very freeing decision for you. Would you advise others to keep their maiden name?
Um, I don't know. I mean, for me, it was, I don't think I would advise anybody to do on their name change at all. But for me personally, that name became so important to me as it related to my identity.
Mhm.
And it was, and I wrote this. I mean, when I went back into the courthouse to change my name, I was a, a bundle of nerves. I was scared to death, thinking, am I making the right decision? And it was really empowering because it was me saying that I believe in myself. And that was really, really powerful. Sort of that self-love that's so hard for women.
So to me, in that act, you reclaimed the girl in you. You reclaimed your identity, and it gave you, it seems to me, a clear path forward as yourself.
Right. I mean, it was definitely, I hadn't been Kathleen Buhle since I was 23.
Yeah.
Um, but it felt, and it's very funny, even now when I sign my signature and I sign the big B, my hand doesn't jump because it wants to do an I. And so I have to do the B, stop, UHLE. So it's coming back slowly, but it feels, I mean, it's me saying that I believe in myself.
You talk really about kind of becoming a part of the Biden family and how being so loved by the president and the kind of larger family. Do you consider them still family today?
I think they'll always be family because we share uh, this love of my three daughters. But divorce, and I know you know this. I
Yeah.
mean, divorce is painful. It hurt deeply for a long time. Um, but with time and you know some distance, I'm in a really great place with, we're not on the soccer sidelines anymore, and but we come together for my kids
And
to
have they
celebrate.
reacted to the book at all?
uh Not to me,
And
but I'm really proud of the book, and I think that they should be, if they read it, I would never force anybody to read it, but that they would see, the truth and the heartbreak, but you know, the survival too.
so it seems to me that kind of like getting divorced, changing your name, and now putting this book out, that now you begin again. That chapter is really in the rearview mirror.
Right.
Is that correct?
That is correct. I hope to write another book, but this will be my last book on the Bidens with, you know, any mention. But I felt like this was an important story to write. And when I started writing, when I took a writing class, and I really wanted to become a thoughtful writer.
Mhm.
To me, this was the first most important story I could tell. This was the formation of who I am today.
I mean, I could maybe ask you one other question about anger in women. I think anger is so hard
Right.
for so many women, and I'd be interested in how you kind of found your anger.
And also the shame too.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about, I write in the book about when I found out Hunter cheated on me,
Mhm.
and I was crushed. I don't think I've ever been more hurt in my life, just heartbroken. And but I still loved him, and I wanted to find a way back. And so layered on top of this betrayal was enormous amount of shame
Yeah.
because I felt like, what did that say about me?
Mhm.
That I still wanted this person in my life. And that is just, I mean, and I wrote it all as it was. I didn't, I wrote the truth. I loved
Yeah.
him, not want him to leave. And that's the idea that there was also shame is just, awful. And I think that happens with a lot of women.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I feeling this terrible shame? So I think, and that's wrapped up also in the anger. I repressed, I mean, uh, I definitely got angry, right? I was not, my kids will tell you I get angry. I know that I had, you know, wasn't walking around, you know, saying, oh, I'm just sad. So I did express some anger, but I repressed a lot of it.
And what allowed you to kind of get it up and get it out?
Um, I have to say, writing was a huge help in me really sort of understanding how I felt. And then my girlfriends, I mean, I put my mostly female friendships on the same shelf with my family now. I mean, as a level of importance, because I had women who pushed me in ways to be more honest with myself and to own that anger and to move past it. And that happened on long walks and hikes and over, coffee and wine, where, I had women who just pushed me to be more honest with myself.
Push you to say, like, that's not really true, what you're saying, or dig
Right.
down deeper.
Like, come on,
That's
Kathleen.
where,
You know,
yeah.
you were angry. And I mean, I'm sure I was twitching. It's like, I'm not angry. And I think too, even after the divorce, if anybody had asked me, are you mad? I would say, no, I've forgiven everybody. And I said that over and over and over again without really understanding what I was angry at, what upset me. So I
And
just,
that was,
I mean, betrayal,
yeah,
dishonesty, you know,
you're crazy.
right, gaslighting. I mean, there were reasons for me to be angry, justifiable reasons for me to be angry that I didn't, really allow myself for a long time.